We're just gonna go with the.
No.
Damn. Okay, that was simple.
Good morning. My name is Daniel. Welcome to Orchard Park Secondary School, home of FRC Team 2026. If you have any questions throughout the day, please feel free to ask me. Now I'd like to introduce our next speaker, Rishi and Julian from Team 1241, presenting building a modern base.
Thank you. Cool. So just quick intros for us. My name is Rishi. I've been in the alumni program since 2012, mentoring since 2013. I'm going into my third year on 1241. And yeah, my main part of this is that I'm mainly like strategy and scouting. And during the day, I work basically on strategy and scouting, but for like Prodigy math game. I guess I'm the director of data for the math game. So yeah, that is me.
And hey everyone, I'm Julian. I'm an alum since 2017 and a mentor since 2019, Team 6513. It's going into my second year of mentoring at 1241. And on the team, I do controls as well as the lead for the scouting app development. And in my day-to-day, I'm a senior software engineer at Pine Financial, where I do front-end and full-stack engineering.
So yeah. So why did we decide to do this? Why are we here? Like, what are we sharing today? Well, basically, back in 2024, our scouting was a torture, to say the least. Essentially, like, we didn't really have a structured system. We had a plan. A lot of things fell through, and so we knew that coming into this season, we really needed to revamp our whole scouting situation. Julian was joining the team, and so he brought a background that we didn't have on the team prior, and so yeah, essentially we were using Google Forms before. It required a lot of manual work and limited the amount of variables that we were able to collect and wanted to collect. And we wanted to share it because it was honestly a pretty big success. For just 1 year, we were able to get to definitely a viable product for scouting. We have a lot of work that we still want to do, and we'll talk about that. But for the most part, we got a lot of attention. We used it at Worlds and had a lot of other Canadians scouting with us to kind of create this whole alliance within the app. And then one of the impact winners this year, 1595, was interested in our scouting app and wanted to learn more and try to integrate on their team too. They're from Australia, I believe.
Yeah, from Australia.
But yeah, that's pretty cool. So that's where we're at right now. So the way we started this was basically putting down what were the requirements for this thing. We knew we wanted to make something that was simple to use, that was going to limit mistakes rather than trying to get something that's too complex and trying to gather a lot of data. Little to no mentor involvement in troubleshooting, and it was fun for students that were less engaged with the program. We ended up having like a lot of your scouts end up being kids that are not necessarily your like all-stars, and you want to still engage them in the thing. You want to get them excited about robotics, and if you had a little game that they could play essentially at the event, it was definitely a plus. We needed it to work with 2+ teams. As you may know, we have 1241 and we have 1285. So at events, we have 2 teams running, and so we had to make sure it worked for both of them. At provincial specifically, we had them on different fields, or not this year, but in past years, we've had them on different fields, and so we had to make it work for 2 events at the same time, and have the data centralized so that we could access it easily if we were on the same field. Support hit and match scouting, usable on either side of the field, and then able to capture cycle times without increasing too much complexity.
Yeah, and then on the technical side, we had a few requirements that we wanted to hit. The app needed to be easily usable in the sense that you can pick it up and use it within a short period of time and not be overly complex. And it also had to be reusable for future years. So it's not just like you build a game for 2025 and then you have to rebuild the whole scouting app for 2026 in years to come. We wanted a kind of evergreen core so that we could iterate year over year and have a new version of the app ready in hopefully less time than it took to build this. Another technical requirement is that the devices that our scouts had to use were iPad minis. So we had to design our UI interface to fit on that screen. And that presents its own set of challenges that we'll get into. We needed live updating data, and that needed to be available for strategy and fit teams. So as soon as a match is done, we need to be able to have that data ready. Something that we unique to us is that it was a web-based application. Given my background, it fit my skill set and it was something that I could spin up quickly and teach the kids. And needed a SQL database, given Rishi's background, for data and analytics. And then we wanted to be able to leverage external data. So think the Blue Alliance, StatBotics, and the FIRST Events API itself.
So why not use a Chief app? Well, basically, there's a lot of apps available on Chief Delphi. I think majority of teams, if they just want to get started and get that understanding of how to build like a scouting team and stuff, there's a lot of good resources there. But ours specifically, we didn't really find one that really met the requirements that we wanted. Obviously, we were very specific on some of the data side as well as the web app side, but we were also inspired by 1678 Citrus Circuits. They put out a white paper for their scouting app every year, and there was a lot of influential stuff. I've built scouting apps in the past on prior teams, and so I knew it was possible to get something a little more complex sped up fast enough. It was an opportunity to start a new sub team. We have a lot of kids that are interested in programming, and it's honestly been a pretty high bar to get them going. So, and there was a lot of students that weren't necessarily sure where they wanted to be. They knew they wanted to code, and some of them had brought up that they were interested in going to game design or something. And so this was something probably a little more relevant from that situation, and it allowed us to create a whole app team that we now advertise like as part of the team when we do like the robotics 101 at the school. It allowed us to create a custom database schema. I work in data all day. I query all day. It just was a comfort zone for me to be able to do. If we were in the middle of a meeting and we needed a very specific data point, I could easily just like query it and pull it up. And so it was a plus in that sense as well. And I could teach SQL to the students as well. So initial collection. So essentially, these Excel sheets were not technically how we did it. We actually did it on a whiteboard in the classroom, and then it became an Excel sheet later. But essentially what it was is we started with what data do we actually want for the season. So very simple. We don't want to be going into like too much complexity of exactly what we're collecting, just like the broad idea of like, I want to be able to know, did they pass the line in auto? I want to be able to know like how many cycles somebody averaged over a period of time. I want to know, did they climb, and like did they try to climb and fail, or did they succeed or something like that. So gathering the very like simple stuff, because I think it's an easy barrier to entry, and then it also gives you kind of a guideline to how the second part of this happens, where it's like how you collect that data. What information do you need to get average cycles in a match? If a defender comes over, like how does that change the variables you need to collect to do that? So that was the second part over here. We cared really about some of the fields that we had to simplify at the end of it. We basically like kind of went wild, try to collect everything possible. And it was like, okay, what do we actually care about from this point of view? So we did make some sacrifices at the end of the day. For example, I didn't really care what reface somebody scored on. We didn't think that was as relevant. We did care about like if it was level 4 versus level 1 or something like that. We didn't care about, we cared about if they picked up from the floor, but weren't really picky on like where exactly that was. We had the option to do like a closer or farther, but we ended up simplifying that later on. And we ended up sacrificing cycle times a little bit. I'll go into that a little bit later.
So as a part of the data side, we also did a front-end brainstorm early in the year. It might be hard to see. We can share the slides after as well, but these were some of the Figma mockups we did before 2025, so last year in about November. We took the 2024 game Crescendo, and we essentially mocked up what our scouting app would want to look like in Figma. And Figma is a really good tool if you want to do something really quickly. They have a free tier for one file that you can spin this up, and this was what we did. This took about a week, and we had different students kind of, we set out like a general standard, and then we just said each student can kind of take one screen and think of what you would want that front end to look like. And then, these were the culmination of the 6 stages, and you might see some relevancies and some things that are similar when we show you the actual app. But there were 6 screens that we kind of wanted to focus on: setting up the match, starting positions, auto teleop, end game, and then a finalization. So this was kind of the first steps we took on how we wanted to lay out our UI. Some things look the same, some things look completely different, but it's a good first step to do, just to get the kids thinking about, okay, what do I actually want to do, and with the data we need to collect, how can we do that most efficiently given the space constraints that we have. And so now I'll go more into the technical implementation of this. This is a very high-level tech stack diagram of how our app functions. So our users interface through a hosting system called Vercel. It's made by the creators of Next.js, which is the framework that we use. It's the framework that I use at work and I've been using for years, and was the most comfortable and the easiest for me to teach students. We had a debate between TypeScript and JavaScript as the language. We chose TypeScript just to align more with the industry. We use Tailwind for our styling instead of raw CSS. And our component library, a really popular one right now is ShadCN UI. And those are kind of the core features, the core stack of our app. And then we have a authentication and permission system that we use called Clerk. I've used Clerk a lot of times throughout my time at work and just personal projects. Really great free tier that could support the whole app, development mode, production mode, across 8 teams that were using it at once. Didn't even come close to anywhere near the pro limits. And for our database service, we didn't want to do a custom database. We used a service called Supabase. They're a really cool service to use. It's all online. They have a great free tier. It's a really common theme, great free tier. And in order to talk to Supabase, we use something called an object relation mapping. Super technical, I know. Essentially, it's just ways to convert your application code into SQL queries so that you're not writing raw SQL in your application. And we chose a library called Prisma. It just has the best integration for what we needed at the time. And a common theme was that it's something that I could teach the kids to use because that's really what we wanted this to be, is getting them to learn how to do it. So this is very high level what our stack is, and this hasn't changed at all throughout the evolution of the app. So it's kind of cool that it kind of stayed the whole way.
If you have any questions, like by all means,
Yeah.
This is gonna be very weird. Just have an answer.
Okay, so I'll go into a bit more of a description about Clerk itself. We had a few requirements that we wanted to use for authentication. We needed a solution that was plug and play with the tech stack. We needed a generous free tier and allowed users to sign up with email and password. We thought about using like a Discord login or something like that early. It takes a bit more to set up with Clerk, but Clerk does let you do that with any social provider you want. And it was super easy for us to integrate and spin up fast. There's a whole concept of rolling your own auth or implementing your own authentication. Working in industry, don't do it. There's so many things that you have to like worry about. Clerk just handles it really nicely. And for something relatively small scale like a scouting app, it's an easy solution if you're doing anything in React.
You said you had like 20. How many accounts?
Yeah, it's like you're allowed 25,000 monthly active users in the free tier. So
yeah,
it's pretty lenient.
We didn't mention this in the requirements, but I think it's
Pretty evident.
more evident that like the freer the better. Like we tried. I think there was really, now that I'm thinking about it, the only costs that we had were
The domain.
the domain, but
Yeah.
that was more our own thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, we didn't really need it.
Yeah. And then for our backend, like I mentioned before, we use Supabase. And again, there's a few reasons why we chose it. It uses Postgres under the hood. So there's some differences between the different database types like MySQL and Postgres. Postgres is the easiest and the most widespread. So this is a big plus. Again, generous free tier. We're able to have both development and production databases for free. That way, we were able to develop in isolation and development without having to impact our production data. The free tier, each database in the free tier gives you 500 megabytes of data. Sounds like not a lot. In all of 2025, across both of our databases, we used 5 megabytes. So we used like 1% of the free tier for just 2025. So we were like, okay, perfect. This is well within what we need. It allows direct connections to the database. So Rishi can set up dashboards and directly hit the database rather than having to go through our application to get the data. There's lots of documentation. It's a relatively new product, but there's tons of documentation and tons of integrations. If you choose any other framework, they have documentation for it. And it easily integrates with Next.js, which was a big plus for us. So that's Supabase. And like Rishi said, at any point, let us know if you have questions.
So our initial internet solution, so essentially because it was a web app, we were limited in the fact that we needed to have an active connection at events. We had a couple of solutions. So one thing that's important to know this year and why I specifically call this modern is previous to this year, it was a really big, it still is a no-no, but it was a much bigger no-no to have a hotspot at an event, specifically like one that was on a 2.4 or like a 5 gigahertz, because that's what robots use. But with new radios, it's been a little bit less of a problem. So we thought we could potentially use it, but we had a solution to go wired as well, which was, so I'm talking about this. I call it initial for a reason because it sucked, in all honesty. We had a lot of complexity that came with essentially, if we wanted to go wired, I had like 6 to 8 Ethernet cables with like 6 to 8 adapters that are going into iPads, all going to a switch, all going to this router here that had like a fizz. That had a cost. I forgot that was we ended up having to just use like a hotspot, but reality is like a QR code backup would probably have been a better idea here. A lot of teams use it where they just like the apps itself can exist locally, and they can scout it. You create a QR code that maybe one person with internet has to just scan in order to get the data transferred to them. So that was a way better solution. I think majority of apps and Chief use that solution. But yeah, we kind of wanted to talk about the bad solutions that we had as well.
Yeah, so kind of piggybacking off that, one thing that I was able to teach the kids and implement within the app is offline data storage. So as Rishi mentioned, we needed a direct connection to actually run the app because it is a website. However, to mitigate kind of the data needs, we developed this in a way where the second that you start a scout flow, right, you click start, you can actually scout the whole match offline. There's no like connection needed. It's all like client in the browser. Every action and everything that happens within that 2.5 minute time frame is saved to the browser storage called local storage. There's a mini database that you can store about like, I think 0.5 gig of data in there. So for us, it was like a perfect solution. And we also developed this in a way where if you were to lose connection, refresh the page, it would actually check to see if you had data in the browser for a specific scouted, like specific match. And if there was, it would load it in and continue where you left off. So that way it was able to actually like, if your internet did go down during a match, which never really happened because we used a hotspot, this was a fallback solution for us. And once a match is scouted and submitted, if everything goes well, that local storage is wiped. So that way we don't actually exceed the browser limit. If we needed to do a fully offline solution, we could probably leverage this a lot more and like storing like match schedules, storing stuff in the browser. That way you can just generate all the QR codes and then dump them after. But this was a really good solution for us to have and a good fallback. And this is what it looks like. I know it's really hard to see, but essentially like we store all of the actions. Every row that you see is like an action that the scout has done. And that's how it stores in the database. And it's really hard, like again, hard to see, but it's all the data for each action is stored in this structure. And also user data, the starting position, the match, and all that stuff is stored in here as well.
Just to clarify, every action is literally every action. So
yeah.
Any intake that happens, any outtake, any button that's clicked,
isn't correlates to an action.
Store as a log, so that we have like everything kind of separated, and then on the data side, we aggregate it to kind of look. I'll go through some of the charts, but we keep it as bare bones as possible.
That was one of the architecture decisions we chose. Was every action is essentially a row in a database. It's not like a whole match gets one entry. Each action in the match gets like its own row in what we call an actions table, and that helps fuel a lot of like our analytics and our stuff that we can actually query off of that. And we did that because we wanted to initially try to get cycle time, and you can actually like track, okay, this action happened at this time, and the intake happened at this, and the score happened here. You can compute the difference in time, and then there's your cycle time. We didn't use it as much, but that's why we chose to architect it this way. Okay, so as Rishi mentioned, we did a pit scouting flow as well. So another big scouting feature that we see a lot of is on load-in day or you go ask around the teams about the robot and try to collect information to see, just to have on hand. And one of the things we wanted for that was image uploading. Image uploading, doing it manually is really hard. I work with it all the time, and I still am not a professional at it. And I watch a lot of front-end YouTube, and there's a really popular YouTuber that essentially had the same problem that I did and made a whole product to solve it. It's called Upload Thing. It essentially generates components that like a image drop zone, a file uploader, and it handles all of the backend to make file uploading like one click and one file drag. It does all the technical stuff, comes with 8 gigabytes of file storage for free. Again, free tier that played with us nicely. For the whole season, I think we only had this for our last 2 events, DCMP and Worlds.
Yeah.
Was it Mac?
Yeah.
So 3 events. We had for 3 events. And we also let another team use our pit scouting on Newton division. I think it was 188.
Yeah.
In total, we used 3 gigabytes out of the 8. So that was a lot higher of a consumption, and it's probably where we're going to have to spend some money if we want to continue this year over year, have all the data. But file uploading and image saving is always expensive. So if you're going to do something like this, just keep in mind that if you're going to handle images, can get expensive.
Mine did if you wanted something outside of itself, like a Google form is probably enough to suffice if you did worry about storage being a problem.
Okay, this is a lot of text, but one other technical detail we wanted was to maintain the concept of the robot state during a match. So in this year's game, because there was 2 game pieces, in our initial front-end mockups, students found that displaying all the fields that were possible cluttered the screen a lot. And because we were using iPad minis, this cluttering just got even further. It got even bigger. Because of the 2 game pieces, you have intake, outtake for both game pieces. The Coral had 4 levels of scoring and all other actions we wanted to track, like drops, misses. You can intake from the ground, intake from the Coral station. And if we were to put this all on the screen at once, it looked like a mess. So what we did is we built into the scouting flow the concept of state. So what I mean by state is that the app only will present the scout the actions that the robot can do given its state. So an example for this year's game, if a robot possesses 1 coral and 0 algae, the only actions that would be displayed on the screen are intaking for algae because it has none. It can only intake, not score, and scoring for coral because it cannot, because of the rules this year, you can only hold 1. And this found that it decluttered the screen a lot and made it a lot easier to use because the scout can just remember, okay, I can't actually enter a state that isn't possible in the game. And it eliminated a lot of data inaccuracies for us because we knew for certainty that an intake of a coral would always be a score action of a coral would always follow an intake. So there would never be cases where it would be out of order. And again, that helped us with cycle time, which we didn't use as much, but was a requirement for us to do at the time. And just technical details, it uses React context to manage this so that you can maintain state between different components when they're rendered and re-rendered. These are some of the screenshots of the state. So here, the robot has no game piece, and you can see the only actions are intaking actions. So it's coral pickup from either station, coral from the ground, or algae from the reef or the ground. And we colored the actions to be similar to the game piece color. So anything coral is white for intaking, and anything algae is the teal color of the ball. This is for the case when they have coral. So you can see now we have the scoring options for coral in orange there, but we still have the intaking actions for algae because the app knows, hey, we can only intake algae when we have none. This is when you only have algae, again, coral intake only, but you have all of the algae scoring on the side there. And when you have both coral and algae, all you see is coral scoring and algae scoring on the left-hand side. We also followed kind of like a directional approach. So if you noticed, on all the intaking actions were on the right side of the screen, and all the scoring actions were on the left side of the screen. So that way, a scout watching this can put the iPad on their lap and use 2 hands, one hand to scout the intake actions, and one hand to scout the scoring actions. And they said they enjoyed it, and it made it a lot easier to track, okay, right to left flow, and this would be flipped if the screen was the other way around.
10 years old. This is just supposed to be, it's not an hour video, but essentially we were, after testing it a bit, we found a lot of areas to simplify. One thing that we basically didn't see coming this year was exactly how fast the game was. You will easily miss cycles if you're not paying attention. And so our idea of having certain things happen at certain times wasn't really viable. All I really cared about was how many coral did they score. We kept the intake to keep the whole state idea, and I think it overall simplified the flow and kids' understanding, but intakes were not necessarily required from an analysis point of view, other than knowing like if they could ground pick them or not. But outside of that, like we really just cared about the scoring, and so we cut a bunch of stuff. We stopped worrying about cycle time. We basically focused on like the branch level being the only thing that mattered, and then if they scored algae in the net or processor, or if they just outtaken it around or missed the net. But yeah, in the beginning, we tested a bunch of stuff. We went through a lot of iterations of like how the buttons exactly work. Like for example, there's an algae dislodge button. If you click it at first, it would just like react and then not do anything. We realized that's really confusing for kids. So we made it disappear for a couple seconds so that they realize, okay, that action actually didn't happen. Stuff like that, we tested about. We ended up sacrificing pit scouting and something else, lead scout pages for New Market, and brought in the pit scouting later on. Yeah, so we did a bunch of training. So essentially, we had a lot of videos of us doing practice. Like that's one of the initial practices when we didn't even have like tracking available. But it was kind of good content to get the kids to understand like how this game is supposed to play. We get them in a room with like the lead scouts and some of the mentors and walk through and let them scout these matches from the app itself. We learned some of the bugs that came up, but the biggest part was just like getting them training with it, getting their feedback right away. This was done about, I think, a week before New Market. But the best part about this was we have this end screen here, which I know you can't really see it all, but essentially it lists like all the cycles that happen. It aggregates the values if you like click here. So we could check it over after they scouted it. So what happens is we'll go through a match with the whole class. Then the lead scouts and mentors will go through, make sure that they're within one cycle of what the actual value is, and check mark, you've completed one. Once you've completed 3, you're good to go. You've been trained. Yeah, it also helped us test our internet solution that we ended up dumping. First event, a lot of problems, as you probably assumed. So first of all, New Market is a Faraday cage. So it was awesome when we were really up there. There's like no internet available, but we figured it out. Lost a couple of those early matches, but had to do them later. We found a lot of bugs, and we had like students sending like messages of what the bugs were and logging them so that we could, after the event, hit them full speed ahead. And then iPads. So these iPad minis were basically used in the classroom pre-2019. And so they were not really functional to be used in the classroom anymore. So they were given to the team as a result. But with old iPads, we didn't realize how much it mattered for us to actually like test out every single iPad, because some of them had different firmwares than others, and a website just doesn't work. Our website just doesn't work on some of them. So we ran into that issue. So next event, we ended up testing them all over. We found out there was a whole generation of them we couldn't use, but we had enough to run 12 to 14.
Yeah, that's yeah.
We ended up using our phone. Like for New Market, a lot of kids ended up using their phones, which is it's not an ideal solution, but it got the job done.
Yeah, some kids also have their own iPads that they were able to use, but bigger screen had a little bit of UI shift, but it did the job.
So scanning dashboard, let me switch with you actually.
Yeah.
So essentially, we use a service called Cluvio to host our dashboard. What it is I'm able to use Cluvio to connect directly to the Superbase dashboard or Superbase database that Julian had set up, and allowed to create custom queries in like a UI and put them straight into a chart. So the way it kind of looks, and I'm just going to show it off here, is this is an example of kind of what an event will look like. So I have right now it filtered for provincials. And you can see here, we have like our average game pieces. If I were to click into this chart, I have a big query with just a bunch of data being collected. And I can like customly set like, okay, I want a little value bar to show up for average game pieces so I can visually see like how different things are. And this filter allows us, we allow us to set filters to set what event we're looking at. We also have a team lookup and a match lookup. So what that looks like is looking at 1241 at provincials. We have all our matches that 1241 played, all their game pieces, and a bunch of other stats here. And then a bunch of charts. So what you're looking at here is average game pieces, or the number of game pieces scored per match. You're looking at auto. That is like game pieces scored in each match period. So that's auto, that's teleop. And then this is coral scored at each level and algae scored at each level. So a lot of information, but essentially it allowed us to be at scope, like what does this team look like? I would look at this and be like, oh, that was a really good match. We should see what happened there. Like, I picked provincials because we look really good in it, but we had bad matches too. And if they were really low, we would probably look into it and see like what actually happened. And we do have comments that we can go back to. I didn't have it in a view here, but I do have like these bars here. Every number here says 0, except that blue one says 15. This is the number of cycles under defense. So if we did see at match 78, we had like a lower score, we could see that, oh, there were 15 of our cycles were under defense. That's probably why that happened. This bar here will turn red if the team died in a match, like it'll show where it is. And this bar, or actually this green one, sorry. This green one will turn red if they died. This black one will turn green if someone played defense in a match. So it helps us find, like, if I looked up a team, I could see which matches they played defense in, and I could go back to those videos and look at it, or go back to the comments and see what happened and how they actually spent that match.
Do you guys have data for how long the other team defended you?
Technically, we do.
Technically, we do, yeah.
So the way it worked is there's a big button that says "is defending" here, and it's just like click it, timestamp, and then the second they unclick it, timestamp.
Yeah, and it also disables every other action. So like the scout can't actually do anything until they cross back over and say like they're no longer defending. So we always assert that we'll have 2 events that say started defending and stop defending right after each other, and then we store the timestamp, do the difference, and that's the long.
Some of the ideas that we had to improve this is like, if they were to click "is defending," you could select like which team that they're actually defending if you really wanted to connect it, or like what station they were playing at, so that the kids actually had something to do. Because I think while robots were playing defense, they kind of like turned their brains off because they didn't really have anything else to do. But it kept them. It probably would have kept them engaged more. But yeah. We also have match lookup here. So I obviously picked our best match to show off, but essentially. It shows off like every color here is a different team. So it's the blue lines and red lines. This is how many game pieces they scored. You have L4. You have like all the levels here. You have all the algae here, and you have auto. And then right here, it's pretty hard to read, but all the climbs where the starting positions were. So you can kind of imagine where the teams were set up. And then comments, which I think were like really crucial for us understanding what was going on, including finding bug matches. Sometimes kids got nervous that they didn't know what to do, and so they wrote in the comments, "Sorry, I wasn't paying attention," and then just submitted the match and didn't tell anybody. But it helped us understand exactly what's going on. We also had like scouters attached to the matches, so we could like review like who was doing it, and maybe like if people needed training, we could like get back to that as well. And yeah, similar things with the like under defense, play defense. So you can see here, the green here, that means 95-25 play defense in the match, and they ended up defending 41-52. And yeah, some other stuff. Here, we had this is not really useful for provincials, this is really useful for Worlds. We really needed at Worlds a robot who could do from the middle of the reef and algae auto. So we ended up creating these charts to kind of show like who had done these algae autos a lot, and then we could like basically create our third bot pick list off of that. So this is where the like custom charts ended up coming useful. It was not something that we needed even before Worlds, like maybe at provincials.
Is it the same with Italia? Do you guys just get the data for which level of coral they scored or which side they scored in auto? Like you get the data for let's say they scored from the right side and get from the.
Yeah, so as Rishi mentioned, we gave up the where they scored.
Yeah, the left and right side we gave up.
Yeah, but we were confident in 1241's abilities to like essentially adapt to a team's auto if they couldn't adapt theirs. So we had autos for both sides. So for us, it didn't matter which side they ran it on. But for a team that it might matter, it is definitely worth it to add that in. But for our use case, we didn't need it.
Yeah, so auto technically we knew because it's starting position.
Yeah.
We didn't know.
Oh, fair. Yeah.
How many scouts do you have?
Depending on the event. So
Yeah.
we had
Newmarket was big.
Newmarket, we had, because we have 2 teams, we had enough scouts. But like at Niagara, we only had 1 team.
Oh, yeah.
And I think we had our like
6
teacher scouting at some points. So yeah. like, so it was definitely rough. But I think we ended up like this can run technically with 6 scouts. But we had like some matches where we had to have less than 6. And I'll kind of walk through what we ended up doing when that stuff came up. Yeah.
You talked about earlier about what was it? It was how they were like scouting out templates on
Chief.
what does that mean? Is there like
Yeah, so on Chief Delphi itself, like on the forum, there's a lot of people that advertise their scouting apps that are easy to download. They have like repositories up there, so you can use it right away. And so I would say if anyone's like wants to get into scouting for the first time, or like maybe their system isn't as reliable and you don't have the development time for something like this, it's a great solution.
because I'm trying to make a scouting app for my team right now because our scouting lead just graduated.
Yeah.
So.
I can imagine. There's a lot of things that you can start off with there, I would say. There is some stuff I would say here that you can take that's probably simpler to implement. But yeah, there's a lot of examples that you can take and inspiration. And obviously if you want like the best, the Citrus Circuits white paper is probably like the best overall breakdown of an app you can build.
Agreed.
So I put some screenshots here for later. If anybody is, we will like. I guess I'll tell you right now. I might distract you from this now, but rhrscouting.ca. That's where the app exists. You're free to use it, whatever, test it out, play through the flow. You will not mess with our data as of right now. But yeah, it's available. You can just make an account. We'll go through that after. Strategy analytics. So the dashboard is nice. It's cool. It's not necessarily what strategy we'll end up using. Like it is possible. Like we had one kid with a laptop, like looking at the dashboard throughout, but for the most part, when we were talking to teams, it wasn't really the tool that we wanted to use. We needed like a match card separately to kind of understand how a match would play out. So we ended up building a solution within Google Sheets. It was a familiar environment, I would say, for people to use. So it was a great solution in that sense. I just had to find like a system that connected my database to Google Sheets. If you have like technically, I believe if your database is within Google, there's an integrated, like there's a solution that already exists. But anything outside of that, you have to have like a middle person. Yeah, I have some of the examples up here of what we did. So I'll walk through it a little bit, but it's not like too crazy. Maybe I'll show if we have time at the end. I'll actually show the example.
Yeah.
But yeah, we have the red alliance and blue alliance here. Basically, what they're able to do is they look up the team number. They look up they have the event set at the beginning, and it populates the team numbers and it brings in all the data that is in the database that they would need, that it would be relevant. And anytime they like change the match number, it'll update automatically, but they have a refresh button if they want to bring in like brand new data. So it's shown like basically comparisons between the alliances. It'll show like we look at the average scores between them. We look at the max. We look at potential for RPs. So this calculator just shows like, can they get certain RPs? Like, is it possible based on their max numbers? We stopped looking at this after a while because it's just like everyone ended up having that ability, but it didn't really flow through. And yeah, max and average were basically what we would find for the most part. We had a view of like this that allowed them to put custom team numbers in. So for eliminations, we could just like put that in right away. If we were to do like a more succinct solution, we would upload the alliances or be able to pull the alliances, and then this would just populate automatically. But it was good for what we needed. And it looked nice on a big iPad, which is what our team ends up using. So pit scouting for strategic. So why are we pit scouting in the Big 2025? I think like a lot of people have kind of dropped it as a thing. I think I've dropped it in the past because I was just like, oh, this is less important than everything else that's going on. But it's actually been very useful for us in recent history, and I would definitely push people to do it. I would prioritize certain variables that are important for you. So for example, for us, we had a bunch of stuff that we wanted to do. We want to weight, drive base, and where they could score. And where they could score ended up being more useful because than I thought it would be. 8884 was our first pick at provincials. 7632 was our captain at Worlds. Both of them, for some reason, did not do analogy in the net during qualifications. They both decided it was a waste of time for them. But it was a crucial skill for eliminations. They both told us that they were able to do it. 8884 we already knew because they wanted an event with waffles and they were like popping off with it. And then they just decided they weren't going to do it at provincials anymore. But this team, 7632, is from Taiwan. There's no way I've watched any of their matches. And if I did, I didn't connect that they could do net. But we found it out here. We ended up asking them. They're like, yeah, we can do it, no problem. They did it in like one limbs match because we ended up not trusting it too much, but it was perfect. So I kind of wish I could trust my data more. And yeah, it ended up being very useful. Middle autos ended up being a big part of this as well, so that we could understand what people could do from there. I don't really, like, we had some extra information. I don't really care about your drive team's like experience as much, because it really just matters like your performance on the field. You could have 4 years and still like struggle versus like be a brand new driver.
Yeah, and then from a technical side for the fit scouting, we wanted the form to function as the create and the edit at the same time. We didn't want to have like two separate flows where you like, oh, add fit scout or edit. So the form, what will happen is it pulls for the team number at the event. If there's no data saved in our database, you're the create flow. So anything you enter and save will create the instance. Let's say afterwards you forget something or you want to edit something, you go back to the same team in the same event. It will pre-populate all the values that you've already scouted, and then you can edit it in place and save it that way. It just makes it a bit easier. That way you don't have another page, another set of things to manage. It's just all in one. Just very small technical details, but the whole form is just inputs, radio buttons, and checkboxes. Very basic stuff.
So yeah, we had some interesting challenges. So one of them was after Newmarket and Niagara, I believe. We basically had scouting the whole match in auto. That happened a lot. Even like we tried to add some like quick solutions, it didn't end up working. So what we ended up doing is, you can kind of see with this example here, when auto ends, it has this big red flashing screen. And so it's really a struggle to continue to scout, to go through it. But we stole this from FTC, the referee screens when they're like scoring matches. It flashes bright yellow when the match ends. So we kind of brought it over. It ended up working perfectly. Like, kids just don't like to see the flashing. But it improved the accuracy of our data overall. We don't actually know when auto ends. All we did is when the match started, we just waited 15 seconds and then started flashing it. That's what FTC does. Oh, actually, no, it does know when match ends. Sorry. You do FTC. So we had some data quality issues as well. There is a couple of ways that we were able to isolate it. So the quickest solution without building a whole validation pipeline, which I'll talk through in a second, was looking at like max and min gate pieces for each team, especially like your top 20 teams. And if there was an egregious number, it allowed you to go back and see like what happened in that match. We ended up having a pretty creative way to update this data. So essentially, if I were to go back and rescout a match, what it did was we joined our data so that we first looked at their starting position, and we looked at the scout that made that starting position, like who put that into the app. And then any action that specific scout did on that match, we brought that data forward. So let's say Julian scouted a match, he had a bunch of actions, and then I go back and it's like, Julian scouted the whole match in auto. What is he doing? So instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to rescout the match. It's going to replace the starting position one with my ID, and then it's going to look for all the actions that I did. So it doesn't delete anything that Julian did. For the most part, it keeps everything that Julian had. So in case like we needed to revert something or something went wrong, we had the data still available. But it automatically just took the latest scouter's data. And that was kind of our way to quickly fix matches. So at the end of events, it was like me, the lead scout. We would sit there, we would 2 times videos, and we would just like correct all the ones by just going through the app, and it flowed through the data instantly. Thank you, Thomas and FTAs, for having live videos this year. Saved us. In reality, like what I would want to do is basically, since we have the whole match available and we know how much coral was scored total, how much algae was scored total, we would pull that data from the FIRST API or pull it from the Blue Alliance and basically validate our total numbers versus their total numbers. And if there is a big discrepancy, then we know there's some problematic thing happening in this match. We can check auto, we can check teleop, and we can just like bubble all the biggest problems to the top and deal with those right away. So that's probably what's going to end up being our solution. It might exist in a Jupyter notebook or like a really quick solution. It might be in the app, but yeah, it's not too hard to get going. But yeah.
So another challenge we kind of had, this is a term that's used in front end and web development a lot. It's called integration help. Essentially, what it means is everything works great when you're developing it, but the second you put it into production, it all goes up in flames. Hence the image that I chose. So yeah, some students wanted to use their personal iPads, like I mentioned earlier, that were bigger than the iPad minis that we initially developed on. So when you develop for a smaller screen and scale it up, everything looks not the best. So that's one thing. Solution for that, make it responsive, but because of our limited time, we didn't want to focus too much on that. Clerk. So the way Clerk works, Clerk is a separate system, right? So in order for them to talk to our application, they function off something called webhooks. A webhook is an API route that our app has that Clerk calls whenever an action is made. So to do that, you have to set up Clerk, you have to test it locally, you have to deploy it, test it again, and it took me and the students like probably a couple weeks, like a couple days to actually get it sorted. But once it's done, it's set up and it's good. But that's something that you only have to do once, but you need time to actually set aside to solve it. Another one was, I don't know if you guys know, but the Blue Alliance paginates their data. We didn't know that. So at Worlds, we loaded in, did our pit scouting, and at the end of the day, a kid's like, why are 15 teams missing? I can't go and scout them. If you know, the divisions this year at Worlds were 75 teams, and Blue Alliance paginates in pages of 60. So we were missing 15 teams, which correlated 1-to-1. So the lead scout and I, because he developed it, we sat down in the hotel room and cranked out a solution to actually like pull the rest of all the pages in and combine them into one list. And we did that like within, I think it was like an hour or two, and then we had it the next morning. But again, it's like something that you wouldn't think of until you actually have to do it and integrate all your systems together. In total, like from our tech diagram, we had about 6 external systems or external libraries and things that you had to orchestrate together. And something's bound to go wrong. It's never going to go perfect. So there's always a little bit of integration hell, and making sure you set aside time for it, and you'll just roll with the punches as they come up.
Plans for next year. So essentially,
Yeah. So plans for next year. Thanks, Waffles. So all of our scouting app kids, developers, graduated, unfortunately, except for I think some are going to mentor. So what that means is we have to teach a whole set of new kids front-end development. The benefit, though, is that because of this evergreen system that we designed and developed, it's not actually teaching them how to build like the whole thing from scratch and having to sink that time again. Obviously, we'll still teach them how it works and how it functions so that they can make new features, but we don't actually have to spend that time to bring it up. So hopefully that'll offset a little bit of the time we have to teach them to do the development. And we also want to emulate different games with different game piece types and counts, and see how those would interact with our system. So we gave some examples. Single games would be like 2018, 2020, 2022, and 2024. And we're going to do some trials with how we would develop a UI for that. And also multi-game pieces like 2017, 2019, 2023, and obviously this year. We also want to build out the strategy-focused pages like Rishi was mentioning into our app, and this is where Waffles comes in. I spoke with Brendan and Tegan at DCMP. We kind of shared a lot of this presentation, and they shared their implementation. And we really liked some of their pick lists and match card UI that they built. So we're going to take that as inspiration. Thanks again. And try to build this out for next year. And then, like Rishi mentioned, create a tool to hopefully find those erroneous matches, whether it be in the app or a separate file.
Yeah, one thing I'll say, and I don't know if you mentioned it here, the training for the students, so they had no front-end experience going into this, and they ended up developing the whole app like throughout the season. So what ended up happening is, honestly, we leaned a lot on like, I think it was code counting, right? To get them going, to get them started on. And then it was just like trying it out, getting them in and getting it working.
Yeah.
We had a horrible, like it was a pretty slow preseason when it came to training. Once the season started, then like there was a new fire that lit inside of them, and they started like going at it.
Yeah, I think it was December. I was like, okay, guys, like, how do you guys want me to teach you? Do you want me to go through a bit of like the theory and how front end works, and like going through the raw materials? They're like, yeah, let's do that. And then they kind of tapered off, like Rishi mentioned. And then I carried a little bit into the season because we were strapped for time. But then I'm like, okay, I came to them like, I think it was in week 1, end of week 1. I'm like, so do you guys just want me to throw you into the deep end, or do you just want to like keep learning on your own? And they all said, just throw us in the deep end. So like, all right. And we split up all the front end screens, and we gave each kid, or sometimes it was paired depending on if they were a bit weaker. We gave them all screens, and then they just kind of had to figure it out. And then honestly, sped up the development versus them actually like learning how to do it. because it's a problem they have to solve in front of them, and they have to like do it within a time frame. And it honestly was the best training that I could have given to them, is just letting them do it themselves like fully. So that was pretty cool, and it was a great job on their part.
So yeah, try it out, rhrscouting.ca. It's available, just you can make an account.
It's best on a bigger screen.
Yeah, if you select select whatever team you want. I think we have a limited amount of teams there.
Yeah, there's like 7 teams.
Yeah, if you want to be a part of Connect Nights, you can click that. But yeah, it's available there to use.
I can actually show like the admin side on like how it. Yeah, so like another part of this as well is like getting all of the setup to work year over year. So right now the admin is myself and Rishi, so we can actually go into the app and like edit the events we're going to, the season, the field images, and all that stuff, and also like manage the users. So see who's like deactivated, anybody who graduated, maybe we'll still keep them around, but change their status to like alumni or a mentor. Yeah, so I can show that part if you want.
Just any questions
any
before we
questions?
go into that?
We have like I think 10 minutes.
I think one of the things used, it's called like a crowd called Super.
Super base.
Super base.
Wait, that exactly I'm confused by that.
Say it again, sorry.
What is Super Base exactly?
It's essentially a service that allows us to host the database.
It's a database as a service. So essentially it's an application that will host the database for you and give you like cool UI to like manage that database, add new tables, drop anything like that.
So
that
like,
way, yeah.
Yeah, the middle ground between like the app is generating a bunch of like logs that exist. We need to put those logs somewhere so that we can access it on like the analytics side, whether that's Fluvio or Excel or whatever that ends up being.
I don't know why this aspect ratio is like this, but it works.
Yeah, sure.
So yeah, this is the actual start of, this is the homepage of the app. There's a whole authentication system, which if you guys log in, you'll see. Actually, I think this resolution works. Yeah, so this is the homepage, and this is the dashboard. So this is what a scout would see when they're at a match. It has all of the events that we loaded in, and there's an option to either pit scout, which if I go into here, it loads. Did I click it? Why is it not? Oh, there we go. So when it loads in, you see all the teams in numerical order, along with their images. That's a test image for 1241. One bug we had is like it doesn't actually show the full image size, so that's something we'll fix. But you can add an image here through an uploader or a drag and drop and go into the actual form itself. And again, this is what we were showing earlier, where you have height, width, weight, drive base, intake, where can they intake, scoring capability. These are the stuff that would change year over year.
A lot of extra information.
Yeah, a lot of stuff that we didn't end up using, but it was nice to have at the time. So I'll go back one more. I'll show you that admin side.
You want to do the math actually? Or
Do match. Okay, go. Okay, yeah. So let's do science. We'll scout up balls. So can you guys see it in the back? Is it easy to see? Ish.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
Is that better?
Oh, no.
That, why would you do that?
Sorry.
All right.
We'll keep it like this, I guess. Is that okay for everyone?
Is this fine?
Yeah, that's great.
Okay. Cool.
Okay, cool. So first you can see that there's a drop down here. This is actually pulling from the blue lines. So this is pulling all of the matches for the science division. So let's go to qual 48 because we love that match. But it is a type ahead input. So that way they don't have to scroll through this big list of 100 something quals every time. They can just type 48 and they'll get there in one click. It now populates our top bar so that you always know what match you're scouting. And it pulls all the teams in all their positions.
We had this ball scout because we were going to scout human players. We ended up not doing that, but yeah, it was an idea.
Yeah, so we'll pick 1241. We also have the ability to rescout it if it's a replay. Okay. When it's a replay, we wanted to keep the initial data, so we have this checkbox to also add that in. So I'll go into the form. Here's our starting position screen. The option to add a preload and which zone they started in. And this flip field button will essentially, depending on what side of the field we're sitting on, you can flip the UI so that way it's always pointing towards you. And this will save in your browser so that you can always have this orientation whenever you go into a new match. So I'll pick here, zone 1. You have to save this, and this is what saves our starting positions. And when the match has 3, 2, 1, go, all the scouts click start. And now we're into the flow. We have a little timer here based off when they clicked it. And yeah, you're free to just scout it. So scored an L4.
We separated the coral stations more for like simplicity. Like we technically have it in the data, but we didn't look at like did they do left versus right station.
And there's the flashing to move into teleop. We also have an A stop button and an action if they left the line but didn't score. So now you're in teleop, and it's the same actions: coral pickup, coral score, algae, and scoring algae here. Obviously, you're not going to move this fast, right? Maybe you will. But there's a was defended button, which says this cycle is under defense. This is a toggle, so it stays on until you turn it off. But you can still scout and say like, oh, they were performing under defense. If they are defending, it kind of grays everything out until you say that they're no longer defending. And brownout, same thing. It locks everything until they either come back alive or they unfortunately stay there. And we also had an undo feature. So let's say they intake algae, but you realize, oh, that was the wrong one. You can undo it and then say, oh, they actually dislodged from the reef. And we store that it was an undo so that it doesn't hurt their cycle time because that's what we initially wanted. This is endgame. So if they didn't attempt any endgame, you would click that and it would kind of end the flow. But we wanted to also track which cage and what they did. So these are relative to the field wall, to the middle of the cage of the barge. So near is always going to be the one right beside it. Far is always at the wall. You would click where they started and what did they do. So they climbed, and now it starts a timer of how long it took for them to climb. They either failed the deeper shallow or they were successful. So deep climb, that's funny, we never deep climbed. And now their end game is saved. If they wanted to undo it, they could undo that as well, and it would reset their state. You can also go back between endgame and teleop, just because there were cases where a scout might have thought they were going to climb, but they were intaking a coral, intaking an algae, or scoring an algae. And then finally, the finalization screen. So after the match is done, this is what Rishi was saying. All the actions that happened are in this list.
We go to total.
And we go to total. We have a little summary of what they did in the match. And they're broken down by auto and teleop with like an approximate time of when that happened. And then there's some icons here with the shield. That means they were defended. So it's a cycle under defense. And the little redo symbol is if the action was undone. And then just some general info, which team, starting position, did they show up, preload, and any comments. If the match was foghorn, they would click that, and it would submit. You have a confirm modal, just to double check, and it brings you back to the scouting flow to pick another match. Yeah.
Ooh. Good morning. Yeah.
So did you guys consider putting a timeout to the auto? Like it kicks you out after the timer?
Like if it like a forced movement?
Yeah.
No, we just did the red flashing and it ended up solving the problem. If we did continue to have that issue, then yeah, we probably would push them forward.
Yeah.
But yeah, the red thing was enough and a little bit of training.
So very quickly, this is the admin side. So what like a team, a mentor, or a lead scout would set up. You have a season dropdown. So that's actually toggle between seasons. So we persist all of the events, all of the data between seasons. So Crescendo was loaded in there because we tested with that. And then there's a little add season modal here where you would fetch the new season and preload that data. Oh, okay. And yeah, field images where you can see the actual image, and then all of the user information, the event information, and then user information. So I know we're at time, but that's kind of what it is. Any questions?
All right, thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
I guess do you have anything you're starting with, or is it just straight from scratch?